Hello and welcome to this Gluware demo video on the new template builder feature introduced in Gluware version 5.6, which released on May 15th of 2025. The template builder allows users to view and edit variables and templates used in Network RPA interactively. This greatly helps with the iterative process to get variable references and templates that generate the output you are looking for. So let's get signed into our Gluware instance and take a look. So there's two ways to navigate into the new template builder. First, you can navigate from the main application navbar. So if I go over to Network RPA, there's a new menu option to navigate right into the template builder. The second is from directly within Network RPA. So we're going to use the second method first, since it's generally the more native way to begin working with the template builder. So let's navigate into our workflow library. So here in Network RPA, we're looking at our workflow library, and we're going to navigate into one of the workflows that are either in test or draft that we're still working with. So for this first use case, we're going to look at this example ops command NTP, and we're going to edit this workflow. So from the options menu, use the edit option, and this opens up a workflow that's already in progress or has been built. So when using Network RPA, many of the tasks that you drag in interact with devices or API endpoints. And in Gluware's case, we use JSON-based data modeling. So every interaction with the device, even if it's CLI output, is wrapped in JSON, as well as when we interact with an API, generally the result coming back from that API is JSON. So that's an important thing to note, and to do that, let's go ahead and navigate in and start working with the template builder. And we're going to dive deeper into JSON and ultimately our templating language, LiquidJS. So to navigate in, we're going to click on a task here, which is execute operational command. So the premise of this task is you come in, you select the vendor, the operating system, the command mode. You can type any command, in this case a show command, and then integrate it into your workflow. In our case, this example could be used in a troubleshooting routine or a pre-check or a post-check, that sort of thing, where I'm trying to look at an operational state and then take some action on it. In this case, basically just reporting it back to the user in an email. So this task will log into all target devices sent into this task. It will loop through those targets, in this case Cisco iOS routers, and execute the show NTP status command. To use the output of this command, we assign a variable to it. So if we navigate to the variables tab, we see a drop down and we have a variable that has been created called NTP. So let's expand this box. And we see we've named our variable NTP. It is type object. Again, it is a JSON object, although the output of the command is actually a string that gets wrapped in JSON. So you could say string or object. It will result in a JSON object no matter what. And then we have the value. So the value is the double curly bracket indicating a variable in LiquidJS format here. So this is a variable called target response. What you'll see new here with variables and templates is this expand button here to open the template builder. So let's go ahead and open it. So here's where the power of template builder comes in, because prior to using template builder, you would have to run your workflow and potentially look into a log to understand the JSON object and or structure that you're looking to manipulate with a variable or a template. Now, using the template builder, we already know what workflow we're in here. So this is the workflow name. You have to have run the workflow at least once. I'll describe this in more detail, but basically the running of the instance at least once gives us the ability to generate the context. The context is the input that goes into the template or variable that can be rendered into the output. So now we're working with the variable NTP, as I just mentioned. So in this context, since we are running this against a device, we will select a reference device to generate the context to run this off of. When working with variables, you'll only select one device. When working with templates, you can select multiple devices to see how the template could iterate through those devices. So let's choose pod 2 spoke 1 and hit apply. So what you see here is Gluware has pulled in the context. So the context is basically what the workflow has generated as data that the user can use. So if I scroll down here, I see a JSON object with a key value pair of NTP result. I see a block of a string of results, and then I see a section for environment, target response, and device. The key component we're going to be manipulating here is the target response. So if I look at target response, if I expand this JSON object and I see this section of JSON called target response, if I go ahead and click this play button to render the template output, you're going to see basically I'm rendering out the target response, which is this JSON object right here. So just leaving it this way, I get this entire JSON object as my response. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into JSON just for 1 minute. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. It is a data representation format that Gluware uses for all of our data modeling. So it's also commonly used for APIs and configs and other things. You're going to run into JSON-based data structures all over the place. It's lightweight, it's easy to read, and it integrates with most languages, and it is actually native to JavaScript. So Gluware uses JavaScript, and most web front ends use JavaScript. So a lot of things you see rendered in our UI are actually JSON that is being rendered right into the UI. So with that, let's take a look at the second tab I have open, because to be powerful in terms of using the template builder, you want to really understand the JSON piece of it. So what I've done is copy and pasted the JSON object from Gluware into this JSON viewer. And what you'll see here is in this JSON object, it's broken down into my target response. And under that, I have 4 properties. I have my device ID, my target, my status, and then I have another key value pair or an array, which is the assessed node state, of which, if I expand this, I have the command that was run, shown to be status, status OK, the command did run, and then I've captured the output from the CLI as a string and wrapped that in JSON. So while it is human readable, this is really machine readable, which is great for processing. But if I'm trying to send this to an operator, I think passing all of this data might be a little too much or a little hard to read. Let's just say what they really care about is this line right here, which is clock is synchronized, or even basically just the output from the device. So back in the template builder, the way we can manipulate variables is right in this editor here. This is the main window you're working with, because the context is the data set that's fed into your template or variable. In this case, it's a variable, and then it renders the output. So one of the powerful things that you have here is as I float over, I'm going to get help in terms of syntax and understand what I'm looking at. But as I look at using the dot notation of JSON, so target response dot, I get autocomplete, which helps me navigate that tree to get to where I wanted to. So after target response, I want to go to the assessed node state, and then I hit another dot. And then from that dot, we're going to look at the first response in that array. I hit a dot, and then I want to look at the response, and the response is this block of text. So if I hit play now, what you see in output is, instead of getting all the JSON and let's say that, maybe the format I don't want, I could actually use this dot notation to walk the JSON tree to pull out this value of the key value pair, because this is the value of the response. So this is just an example. In Gluware, we're calling this variable NTP, and now I'm walking the JSON object to get this value out. So if I was happy with that, I could just hit apply, and I would apply those changes right in there. So that's the first thing I wanted to show, in that when working with variables, you have the ability to go in and edit and manipulate it to get that data out. So that's one way in which you can do it. So for now, I will just change this back. And see, when you have a misspell or you have a problem, if you get invalid variable reference, it's not able to process the data into the template. So if I fix that spelling error and I click play, I'm back to my full JSON object. So that's kind of demo part one. So let me hit cancel out of here. In the second part of the demo, we're going to stay with the same use case, because I'm going to pass this variable, which is named NTP, into a template. So in my send email task, I'm passing or sending in this case, it's referenced as a variable, but this is a template that will be rendered. So prior to this release, it was fairly often to go ahead and put LiquidJS templating right into the message, right into the body of your email message. Now, what I would highly recommend is not to put your LiquidJS directly within the body, but you reference it using a template variable, which we're going to go into. But this is true for if I'm putting this into an email, or I'm putting it into a Slack message or a ServiceNow ticket. I would create a template variable and just pass it this way. So the way or place in which you define those variables is here. I click on my variable list. We've already looked at the NTP, which is a task-based variable. Now I have my workflow-based variable called NTP result. So as I expand this down, now I can see I have a template. In this case, it's a template named NTP result. It's of type template. And now here in the template field, I can go and start working in the LiquidJS syntax. So similar to what I did for JSON, let's take a minute and talk about why LiquidJS and what it is. LiquidJS is a templating language. It enables the processing of information to present out exactly what you want to see. And as I mentioned, you can push exactly what you want to see into emails, Slack messages, tickets in ServiceNow, whatever external system you want to put it into. You're basically taking data out of the Gluware system, being able to format it, put it exactly how you want to see it, and pass it into an external system. So as you look at this template variable, you're going to see the template value here. And as you can see, we have a templating language here that is LiquidJS. So LiquidJS is very similar to the well-known Jinja or Jinja 2 templating that is used with the Python language. LiquidJS pairs very well with JavaScript. And as mentioned, Gluware is using JSON and JavaScript. LiquidJS pairs very well natively with JSON and JavaScript. So the syntax of the language looks basically nearly identical to Jinja. So if you're familiar with that templating language, it is basically the same, where the double curlies represent a variable reference, and the curly with the percent sign you're going to wrap around control structures like for loops or if then else's, things like that. With that being said, let's take a look at this use case, because one of the most common use cases in the templating is looping to step through things like devices. So let's go ahead and, again, in the template, right next to your template, you can open the template builder. And so here, again, we have the example ops command NTP. Workflow, we have the instance data that I'm working with. We have my NTP result. And I can select multiple devices because I'm working with a template instead of just a variable. So let's go ahead and apply that. Again, in the context side, the context is the same. It's the JSON structure that is a result of running the workflow. And if I need to update that, let's say I want to test for a situation where my NTP server is not synchronized, or I have some up and some down, I can iterate through different instance data to make sure my template handles those conditions. And that's a very good use case. But basically, again, you have your context, which includes your environmental data, your NTP results, and your devices. So let's take a look at what this basic template is doing. I'm looping four devices in devices. So this will step through each device. It will print out a line of text, the ops command for device NTP status R. And then I'm going to write the device name. This is a reference to the device name. And then BRs are HTML formatting. And then just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to write out the full NTP variable. So if you remember from the previous example, I left that NTP variable as the whole JSON object. Then I'm going to have some breaks, and then I'm going to say the NTP state is, and then I'm going to be using a little assign statement to assign response to like walking the tree here. So again, this comes back to navigating the JSON object for my NTP variable. For each device ID, I'm going to have an assessed node state and then a response. And then I'm going to print out that response, and then I'm going to end my for loop. So let's see what that looks like if I render that output. So the ops command results are, and one comment about the output window, it currently does not support HTML formatting, so I won't see it in HTML, but I will see the HTML tag. So when this is in an email or something that supports the HTML, I will see it. But I can see here it prints out the full JSON object. Then I have my lines, and I say my NTP state is. And this is where I'm just rendering out the human readable output from the CLI, clock is synchronized, stratum 4. So this is, again, the clock is synchronized. Now I'm looping through the devices. So here is spoke 1. Again, same thing. I get my whole JSON object. Then I get the summary specifically for this. And then spoke 3. So you can see it's looping through the devices, and I get my output. So this is where, you may or may not want to iterate and edit to derive the exact output that you want. The other thing I'll say is that, let's say you're working with your templating and you're getting to know it or learn it. So when I highlight this, we recognize that this is a for loop. So we have a float over help that helps you with the syntax. So you need the curly %for variable in array, expression, and your end for loop. So it's going to help you with an autocomplete and with help to help you resolve that. The other great reference I would point you to is liquidjs.com. There are tutorials, there are areas to learn, and there's playgrounding here as well. So when you're playgrounding here, it's pure just LiquidJS, and you got to put in your context down here that is feeding into the template and renders the output. The benefit of doing it right within Gluware here is that context is generated from your real workflow. So hopefully that's helpful and you understand, but basically this is where you iterate in the data that you want for your template. And let's just say, for example, I did not want the full NTP object to show up in the output. If I remove this line, and actually I'll remove additional spaces here, and now I render it, it's much cleaner because I'm not putting that full JSON object in here. I'm just printing the device name and the NTP state. Device name, NTP state. So if I'm happy with that and I don't want that full JSON object, I just click apply. What apply does is applies the changes to my workflow. So if I hit cancel here and I go out, the changes I just implemented in the editor are now reflected in the template here. You always want to save your workflow, and then you generally want to validate your workflow as well to ensure you can run it, and then you can execute your workflow. So let's go into the last part of the demo here, accessing the template builder from the main menu. So let's go into Network RPA and navigate into the template builder directly from the main menu. So when you access template builder right from the main menu, it is kind of a blank canvas because you haven't selected the so-called context. So let's step through this again. So we're going to go back into the first workflow we worked with. And this is what I would say is probably, in my view, the primary use case of navigating in this way versus the other way. Because the other way is more native or more natural when you're iterating on a variable or a template and you're trying to get it right. But now, let's say I want to move across workflows and edit templates to add something. So let's go ahead and take that example. So I'm going to go into my example ops command. I'm going to leave this latest workflow instance run so I have data to work with. I'm going to choose my NTP result, the template email, and I'm going to choose a couple reference devices that can generate output. So I click apply. So just like before, I get my context, which is my full JSON structure, and then I get my template and I can render the output from the template. So here we go. And that's exactly what we were seeing before. So now let's say we want to add additional information into this output. So the example I want to highlight is if I come down here and I expand out my environment variables. In every workflow, there are reserved parts of the data model that are always included. This includes the environmental variables. So user information, org information, workflow name, execution ID, all of this, and if there's any error or output, time zone, all of these are always available in your workflows, so they can always be added to your results. So let's take a look at how we would do that. So what I would do here is I still want to loop through my devices, but in addition, I want to add in a variable reference. So as I start typing, autocomplete says, oh, you're typing environment. And as I hit a dot, it's going to say, oh, I'm walking the JSON structure. What data do you want? I want user data. What user data do I want? I want email. So by adding this in, environment.user.email as a variable reference in my template, when I render it, this gets printed out at the top of my output. So let's just add a few others here. So just to kind of make the point more clear, just for formatting, we'll put in the tags, BR to line break, and let me put in these. So now I'm putting in my user email, my org, and my workflow. And when I run this, so now when this gets outputted into the body of my email, I will have who ran it, what the org name was, which is I'm running this in test drive pod 2, and I will have the workflow name right here as well. So just to highlight that, any of the context data can be included in your template and rendered into your output. So this concludes the demonstration of the new Network RPA template builder, again, available in Gluware 5.6. Please also check out the Gluware Github, which includes these example workflows and also example templates. So I'll just click over to github.com/Gluware. There are example workflows and example templates in the repositories there. So with that, thank you very much for your time and interest in Gluware. Have a great day.